Whether you're sipping your morning coffee or catching up later, we've got some industry insights that'll wake you up faster than that first cup. The global auto industry just placed the biggest bet in human history, $1.2 trillion by 2030. And here's the thing that'll surprise you. It's not all going where you think.
That's right. Auto Intelligence is produced by Auto Agentic AI, and I'm Claire, part of the Auto Agentic team.
And I'm Steve, also with Auto Agentic. New episodes drop every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. And today, we're diving deep into how every major automaker, from Toyota to Tesla, BYD to BMW, is fundamentally reshaping their investment strategies. Thanks to our growing audience for tuning in week after week. Your engagement keeps us motivated to bring you these deep dives.
Steve, when I first saw this research, one number jumped out immediately. Toyota, the company everyone thinks is behind on EVs, is spending $70 billion by 2030 on electrification. But here's what caught me off guard.
They're not going all in on pure electric, are they?
Exactly. They're betting on what they call a multi-pathway approach. EVs, yes, but also hybrids, plug-in hybrids, and hydrogen fuel cells. And as I dug deeper, I realized this isn't Toyota being conservative. This might be Toyota being strategic.
That's fascinating because it challenges this narrative we've been hearing for years that it's pure electric or nothing. What does this multi-pathway approach actually look like in practice?
Well, let's break down what Toyota's doing specifically. They're targeting 70 electrified models by 2025 and 3.5 million battery electric vehicle sales by 2030. But they're also investing $13.6 billion in solid-state battery research and development, aiming for 750-mile range with 10-minute recharge times by 2027 to 2028.
750 miles, 10-minute charging. That's potentially game-changing. But Toyota's not alone in this diversified approach, right?
Not at all. What's remarkable is how this strategy is spreading across the industry. Take Volkswagen Group. They're spending $193 billion by 2027. But here's the surprise. $60 billion of that is still earmarked for internal combustion engine development.
Wait, $60 billion on ICE? From Volkswagen? The company that went all in on electric with their ID series?
Right, and when you look at their explanation, it makes sense. They're calling it a dual-track strategy, accelerating EVs while retaining ICE for markets where infrastructure and accessibility are still challenges. They're planning the ID.2 All, a sub-$25,000 EV for mass production in their Wolfsburg plant by 2027, but they're also keeping the Golf and luxury lines in production until 2035.
This is a fundamental shift from the messaging we were hearing just 2 years ago. What's driving this change?
The data suggests it's consumer behavior meeting infrastructure reality. Ford's experience is really telling here. They initially pushed hard on EVs, $50 billion by 2030 on electrification. But then something interesting happened.
Their hybrid sales started surging?
Exactly. The F-150 hybrid, Maverick hybrid, these became their strongest performers in the US and European markets. So Ford pivoted to what they're calling a pragmatic mix. Hybrid surged, ICE retained, EV push slowed because buyers prefer hybrids for convenience and value.
So we're seeing this across multiple manufacturers. What about the companies that were supposedly pure EV plays? How are they adapting?
Even General Motors, which went all in on EVs with their Ultium platform, is hedging. They're spending $35 billion by 2025 on battery EVs and autonomous vehicles, but they're also investing $4 billion in 2025 just for ICE upgrades in US plants. And they've reintroduced plug-in hybrids after US adoption slowed.
That's a significant strategic shift. And I'm curious about the global players. How are companies like BYD and the Chinese manufacturers approaching this?
BYD is fascinating because they're taking a different approach entirely. They're spending $14 to $16 billion annually, but they're electrification first with minimal ICE presence. They've got this DMI hybrid platform that delivers up to 1,000 kilometers of range, and they're exporting globally. They actually overtook Tesla in battery EV registrations in Europe.
1,000 kilometers. That's about 620 miles. That's addressing range anxiety head on. But what about infrastructure? How are these companies dealing with the charging network challenges?
That's where the hydrogen bets become really interesting. Hyundai Motor Group is spending $48 billion by 2025, but they're positioning themselves as the hydrogen leader with their HTWO and Nexo programs. They've got the world's largest hydrogen truck fleet operating in Switzerland and Asia.
Hydrogen for trucks makes sense. Longer range, faster refueling for commercial applications. But are we seeing hydrogen in passenger vehicles?
Selectively. Honda's launching the CR-V FCEV in 2025. It's North America's first plug-in fuel cell electric vehicle. BMW has their iX5 hydrogen in pilot testing globally, with series production planned for 2028 through a joint venture with Toyota.
But not everyone's betting on hydrogen, right?
Correct. Stellantis actually exited their hydrogen fuel cell van program in mid-2025 due to cost concerns. They're focusing their $35 billion plus investment through 2030 on battery EVs and mild hybrids instead, with a goal of 100% BEV in the EU market by 2030, 50% in North America.
You're listening to Auto Intelligence, brought to you by Autoagentic,
the platform transforming automotive retail with intelligent, human-centered AI. What makes this investment story so compelling is how it connects to the retail side. Dealers need systems that can adapt to this multi-pathway future, helping customers navigate choices between EV, hybrid, hydrogen, and traditional powertrains based on their specific needs and local infrastructure.
Now, back to today's topic. Let's talk about the regional strategies, because this isn't just about technology choices, it's about adapting to different markets globally.
Absolutely. Mercedes-Benz is a perfect example of this regional adaptation. They're spending $47 billion by 2030 with a dual-track allocation, 2/3 for battery EVs and batteries, but the remainder for ICE upgrades and e-fuels. Their goal shifted from 50% hybrid, BEV and plug-in hybrid sales by 2025 to by 2030.
They pushed that timeline back 5 years?
They did. And when you look at their strategy, they're maintaining efficient performance engines for AMG, developing new 4-cylinder hybrid and e-fuel ready systems by 2027. They're recognizing that luxury performance buyers might want different options than mass market consumers.
That segmentation makes sense. What about the emerging market strategies? Are we seeing different approaches there?
Definitely. Tata in India is pursuing both BEVs and hybrids in their growing domestic market, but they're maintaining aggressive ICE presence due to infrastructure gaps. The research shows ICE and hybrids are still expected to comprise 40 to 50% of new vehicle sales in emerging markets by 2030, especially where infrastructure or affordability limits BEVs.
So we're looking at a world where the technology mix varies dramatically by region. What about the supply chain implications of all this?
The supply chain story is massive. Toyota's production strategy focuses on localization for North America, China, and EU to dodge tariffs and build supply resilience. BYD has achieved vertical integration. They own battery, chip, and supply chains for what the research calls unrivaled efficiency.
And the battery technology race is heating up significantly, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Tesla is targeting 3 terawatt hours of battery production with their 4,680 cell technology for cheap mass market vehicles. But Toyota's solid-state battery development could be the game changer. 750-mile range, 10-minute recharge, launching by 2027 to 2028.
3 terawatt hours, that's an almost incomprehensible scale. But beyond the technology, what are the investment patterns telling us about the industry's confidence levels?
The investment patterns reveal something really interesting. Total global investment is $1.2 trillion by 2030 for BEVs and battery supply chains. But hybrid demand is surging as BEV adoption slows in key markets. OEMs are hedging with plug-in and mild hybrids for profitability, regulatory compliance, and to bridge infrastructure gaps.
The research mentions hybrids are expected to reach 20 to 25% of global sales by 2026. That's significant growth.
Huge growth. And the leaders in hybrid technology and volume are Toyota, Ford, Honda, Hyundai, and BMW. These companies are essentially future-proofing themselves while the pure EV infrastructure catches up to consumer needs.
Let's talk about the hydrogen investment surge. The research shows a 70% jump in 2025 to nearly $8 billion.
The hydrogen story is really about commercial and heavy-duty applications rather than passenger cars. Hyundai and Toyota are leading vehicle launches. BMW, Honda, and Mercedes are testing and co-developing systems. But the focus is heavy-duty, commercial, long-haul, not passenger cars for the most part.
That makes sense given the infrastructure requirements. But what about the companies that are staying pure EV? How are they positioning themselves?
Tesla remains BEV only with their pure autonomy and vertical integration strategy. They're launching the low-cost Model 2 in 2026, expanding their supercharger network, with a goal of 20 million BEVs per year by 2030. Rivian and Lucid are also all-electric, focusing on adventure positioning and luxury segments respectively.
But even within the EV-focused companies, we're seeing different strategies emerge, right?
Absolutely. VinFast from Vietnam is pursuing global BEV expansion with vertical integration and low-cost platforms. The Chinese OEMs like SAIC, Geely, Chery and Great Wall Motors are driving BEV and hybrid innovation with local EV exports to Europe, Southeast Asia and Latin America. But they're keeping ICE in some models for emerging markets and supply chain flexibility.
This brings up an important point about synthetic fuels and advanced ICE technology. The research mentions ICE innovation continuing for specific segments.
Right, ICE innovation continues for unregulated, rural, luxury and performance segments. There's investment in synthetic fuels and ultra-efficient engines to buffer legacy volumes. Companies like Mercedes with their AMG line, BMW with their performance vehicles, they're not ready to abandon ICE for high-performance applications.
What I find most interesting is how this challenges the conventional wisdom we've been hearing. This isn't the simple EV versus ICE narrative anymore.
Exactly. The research concludes that diversification is the winning strategy. Every major automaker is hedging their bets. EVs are the long-term focus, buoyed by regulatory support and tech breakthroughs. But cost and infrastructure challenges prevent full-scale conversion.
And hybrids are becoming this immediate bridge and profit driver for OEMs facing slower than expected BEV adoption and consumer hesitancy.
The timeline flexibility is key too. Honda, for example, scaled down their EV investment from $68 billion to $48 billion, redirecting funds to hybrids and motorcycles. They're planning 13 new hybrid models with hybrid-first pivot strategy.
That's a significant strategic pivot. What does this mean for consumers trying to make purchase decisions in this environment?
For consumers, this actually creates more options, but also more complexity. If you're in Europe or California with robust charging infrastructure, pure EVs make sense. If you're in rural areas or emerging markets, hybrids or efficient ICE might be more practical. If you're in commercial trucking, hydrogen is becoming viable.
And for dealers, this means inventory management becomes much more complex, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Dealers need to understand local infrastructure, customer driving patterns, and total cost of ownership across multiple powertrains. This is where AI-driven customer matching becomes essential, helping match the right powertrain technology to individual customer needs rather than pushing a one-size-fits-all solution.
The research mentions some specific production milestones. Hyundai's Metaplant America ramping for 2025, Volkswagen's ID.2 all-mass production by 2027.
The production scaling is massive. Ford's Blue Oval City in Tennessee for EV production, BYD's plants in Southeast Asia, South America, and Hungary. Mercedes is building in Tuscaloosa, Alabama for new BEV models starting 2027 plus.
One thing that strikes me is how the investment timelines have shifted. Mercedes pushed their targets back 5 years. Honda scaled down EV investment.
The industry is learning to be more realistic about adoption curves. Early projections were overly optimistic about how quickly consumers would switch and how rapidly infrastructure would develop. These companies are adapting their timelines to market reality rather than wishful thinking.
What about the regulatory environment? How is that shaping these investment decisions?
Regulation is creating this patchwork approach. The EU has aggressive BEV mandates, China has supportive policy, but North America and Asia have slower rollouts. So companies like Stellantis can plan for 100% BEV in EU markets by 2030, while maintaining ICE options for other regions.
The research shows some interesting partnership strategies emerging. BMW's hydrogen joint venture with Toyota, Renault's horse powertrain providing hybrid modules to third parties.
These partnerships make sense when development costs are so high. Why develop hydrogen technology independently when you can share costs with Toyota? Why build hybrid systems from scratch when you can license proven technology?
And the vertical integration story is fascinating too. BYD owns their entire supply chain. Tesla controls battery production, but traditional OEMs are still largely dependent on suppliers.
That's a competitive disadvantage that's becoming more apparent. When BYD can control costs through vertical integration and Tesla can optimize their battery technology in-house, traditional OEMs are squeezed on margins and innovation speed.
As we wrap up, what left the strongest impression on you from this comprehensive analysis?
3 key takeaways really stood out. First, the sheer scale. $1.2 trillion in global investment represents the largest industrial transformation in history. Second, the strategy shift from pure EV to multi-pathway approaches shows an industry learning to adapt rather than forcing adoption. And third, the regional customization strategies prove that global companies are becoming more locally responsive.
For me personally, what impacted me most was realizing that the companies we thought were behind on EVs, like Toyota with their hybrid focus, might actually be positioning themselves best for a diverse technology future. Their $70 billion investment isn't conservative, it's comprehensive. This research really shows us an industry that's mature enough to admit that the transition won't be linear or uniform. The future belongs to automakers who can master flexibility, investing in diverse portfolios, synchronizing global innovations with local realities, and adapting to demand, regulation, and technological change pace. For our listeners, whether you're in the industry, considering a vehicle purchase, or just fascinated by this massive transformation, the key insight is that we're not heading toward a single technology solution. We're heading toward a world where the right powertrain depends on your specific needs, location, and use case. Thanks for tuning in to Auto Intelligence. This episode was produced by the team at Auto Agentic. Learn more at autoagentic.ai. We'd like to thank our producer, Barry Hillier, co-founder and CEO of Auto Agentic AI, for making these deep dives possible. If you'd like to reach out with suggestions for exciting new topics, companies, or people shaping mobility, email Barry at autoagentic.ai. He's always looking for the innovations and leaders defining our automotive future.